And welcome in everyone to what will be our final labor and energy show for the year 2023. Along with JDoc, I'm Joe Kraus. We welcome our listening audience into the show and our viewing audience who are watching today across the Jacob Network on YouTube. JDoc, how are you, sir?
Great, Joe. How are you on this festive holiday weekend, my friend?
Yeah, good to go. Good to go from a holiday perspective, and glad that we were able to do one more program. Sometimes programming turns into a rehash of previous content, but I'm glad you lined up two great guests for us today, and we get to end the year with two guests and some fresh information for the audience. So as we continue the mission of educating the public.
Absolutely, Joe. And here's the thing, we get the opportunity every week to showcase our labor and energy leadership. We mix it up in a lot of different ways. Okay, and this week we get to showcase two of our very dynamic labor leaders who are in the energy sector. What does that mean? That means that a lot of the workers that they represent, in fact, when it comes to David Butterworth, all of the workers that he represents work in the energy sector. And David represents the pipeliners union, and so it's a fantastic opportunity for us, to really get into a lot of what our workforce does in the energy sector. Ken Gomeringer, who is the U.S. Steel International State Rep, District 4, New Jersey and Delaware, represents union workers who also work. The United Steel workers are so diverse in who they represent. But Ken represents individuals who work at our refineries. Okay. And so really, we're going to talk. We have all kinds of things we're going to talk about, from giving back and charity and all that. But also, had a great conversation with Ken yesterday in regards to, listen, the energy sector is forever developing, okay? And our traditional energy sector, our traditional energy companies and resources, the refineries, those who refine our fuel and all, they represent a lot of workers who are, work at the plants, work at the refineries, all those things. And of course, we're transitioning into renewables, but that has to be together. But one of the things that's important, Joe, is you just can't snap your finger, okay, and bang, we're all into renewables. Okay, it's always going to be a great combination of both traditional and renewables, but also the workforce. People would think that you could just snap your fingers and transition traditional energy jobs for renewable jobs. And you and I both know from talking to Sean Steppe that our renewable, our traditional energy jobs, good paying families, sustaining jobs, benefits, all those things. A lot of our renewable jobs, not so much. And so we're going to talk about that fallacy. And we're going to talk a lot about what goes on the pipelines and the importance and safety and efficiency that they bring to our way of life in America today.
I'll remind our audience that you can, if you miss any of today's show, or if you would like to reconsume when you're available via podcast, go to Apple or Spotify, just search the Labor and Energy Show. You'll be able to download this edition of the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. You'll also be able to scroll through our entire library of 2023 and also 2022 as we come to the end of what is 2 years of educating the public, as JDoc said, in a lot of different topics. As we get ready to go to the break, I love Ken being on the program, JDoc, because he expands our reach. The depth and the coverage of Ken's members extend and give us an artificial platform to reach out into New York and into Connecticut and help us throw a much wider net. So we'll kick it off on the other side with Ken. This is the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Happy New Year, everyone. Back in a moment.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits. as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
The best way to describe Anthony, David, and Jan are that they're my brothers. I met Anthony at LA Fitness because I noticed that he had a Teamster's bag and his dad was a Teamster leader.
I'm a third-generation son of labor. My grandmother worked in a factory. My mother and father were both Teamster members. I don't think there's a trade that I don't have a family member in.
What's so big for me coming from a union background is what affects one member affects the entire membership.
A lot of people can relate to the issues that individuals deal with. We pride ourselves on empathy.
The big value that's always instilled in you if you grow up in a union household is the importance of brotherhood. People that lean on each other, that rely on each other.
When we were building this business, having that background and knowing what matters most to the union members is really what we use to drive and build out Retiree First.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome everybody back to the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. I'm ecstatic to bring into the program somebody who's no stranger to the program, Ken Gomeringer, U.S. Steel International State Rep. USW, I apologize. International State Rep, District 4, New Jersey and Delaware. Happy New Year, Ken.
Happy New Year. How you doing?
I am fantastic. It's great to have you obviously back on the show. And, you know, it's a New Year's weekend. And like I said, we get the opportunity to talk to our labor leaders in the energy sector. And today, if you would, let's start out by talking about who, you know, for our listeners, who you represent.
I represent a broad variety of folks, people at oil refineries, chemical plants, also terminals, petrochemical terminals. I got some city workers. Even got a horse farm. Like I said, we're very, very diverse in District 4. So I get a lot of opportunity to represent different groups, you know, which brings different challenges.
And so it's interesting. I do remember from our last conversation, you talked about the horse farm. And so you weren't kidding when we talk about diversity in workforce. When we talk about District 4, okay, and I know you represent mainly the New Jersey and Delaware workforce. Man, we're talking Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, all those territories, and Puerto Rico.
And Puerto Rico, yes.
Yeah, that might be, you know, I got a meeting in Puerto Rico. You know what's amazing? We talk about, and I can't, when you talk about the USW and, you know, a lot of these territories, and the pandemic was obviously devastating and very difficult. But there were some things that came about that became technology every day, and Zoom. I assume that Zoom, which was one of the things that developed out of the pandemic that we will stick with forever. Has that impacted your job every day?
Yeah, I mean, Zoom was a tool that was available for us to be able to stay in contact with our members during the pandemic. We actually did contract negotiations over Zoom, arbitrations. So it was a good thing, but it was also we had to learn how to adapt to doing arbitrations, negotiations, those types of things over Zoom. We utilized it actually for actually having union meetings and all that, because we wanted to stay in touch with our members and get feedback from them, what was going on and what their needs were during the pandemic. And of course, we had to continue to do our business of representing our members and negotiating their contracts and taking care of safety concerns and issues like that.
Exactly. And so it's a festive time of year, of course. And obviously with New Year's, you know, a day away, we're talking, you know, what we like to talk about, you know, the good things our labor unions do. And we're going to get into a lot of issues in a moment. But we had a nice conversation before the broadcast. And USW, United Steelworkers, you have Women of Steel, Adopt a Family, okay, at the Delaware refinery. And there's also do something pretty unique with the veterans groups and give out free haircuts. Now, a lot of these things are not just holiday focused. You do them all the time. But talk about them and how important they are to the culture of the USW of impacting lives, not just on the job, but those in need.
Well, we also understand that it's very important for us to be involved in the communities that our members work in and live in, and to give back, right, to those that are less fortunate than us. So like our Women of Steel, they do a lot of good work with, they've done packages for veterans that are deployed overseas. They send gift packages and all that with, deodorant, socks, things that, we take for granted. They've done stuff like that. Also our Veterans Committee, right? The steelworkers are very entwined with our veterans, and we have veterans committees in almost all of our districts now, and our locals. We do a lot of stuff legislatively for veterans, but also, like you said, one of our locals in Delaware had done free haircuts for veterans on Veterans Day and during holidays before in the past. Coat drives, clothing drives, as you mentioned. My home local, USW Local 4-898, the Delaware City Refinery. Every year they do Adopt a Family, where they adopt like 5 or 6 families and go Christmas shopping for the children and stuff like that. Donations to volunteer fire companies and all that, because they provide a service for us and our locals and our halls and stuff like that. So it's very important to, not only concentrate on the work, negotiating contracts and those types of things, but also being out there in the community and being involved with the community. Me coming from the Delaware City Refinery back in 2009, we were shut down, and we really understood how that also affected the community that the refinery operated in, and the support that we got from the community with, trying to find a buyer and keep the refinery running and keep those good paying jobs in that community. There was a study done back then that, it wasn't just the 1,000 people that work at the refinery. It's like, I think 15 or 20 jobs. For every one job in the refinery, it affects 15 to 20 jobs outside in the community. So it's very important to give back and be involved in the communities that, like I said, our members work and we represent in.
Yeah, and a lot of our members live in those communities, right? I mean,
Yes.
and so it's just part of the culture of labor, and it's all, and it's this time of year we love to point it out all the time, because as you represent on a daily basis, this is an important time. It can be a great time for a lot of people. Some it's not. It's a difficult time, but our labor unions are always there, and that's important. And we like to point it out every week, but particularly now, obviously. Having said that, okay, and by the way, when you mention the veteran groups, one of the things that's important and synonymous with labor is our relationships and our synergy with the veterans, because a lot of our members are veterans, okay, and so a lot of patriotism and I love the free haircuts. That is it's a great thing, along with Adopt a Family, so it's just it's extremely heartwarming. So having said that, that's a year in review, man. I mean, you're out there on the front lines on a daily basis. Okay, let's talk a little bit about 2023. Okay, and so a lot of issues. Okay, and the RINs issue is one of those things that directly impact. You talk about the Delaware City Refinery. Talk about the USW's work on that issue. We've all been working real hard on this radio show on that issue. If you listen to the broadcast, you'll hear Jimmy Snell, who is the Steamfitters Local 420 here in Philly, talking about that RINs issue. Okay. Talk about, the impact that the USW had and the work on that particular issue that you guys, did.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back even before 2023. I mean, steelworkers, myself personally, I've been involved as a local union president doing work on RINs since practically the renewable fuel standard came into effect and RINs became a tradable commodity, basically, which it was never intended to be. So, I mean, we've been down there. Myself and Jimmy Savage, who now works in our political department, who was the president of 10-1 back in the day, we been down there many times lobbying and giving testimony at different hearings and stuff like that. This year, though, we did something a little differently. We actually, our legislative department worked and drafted some legislation. It was called the Safeguarding Domestic Energy Production and Independence Act. And it kind of had something in it for all the shareholders, right? Because when you talk about RINs, you're talking about ethanol and all that. So you have the corn lobbyists, you have us, you have the environmentalists. Everybody's got their piece of the pie that they're trying to look out for. And for us, what this legislation did is it would set the RINs price at a standard price. And it wouldn't be a tradable commodity, right? And also with this legislation, the money that was generated was going to go into different pots to help different groups. So back in September, what the steelworkers did was we got a contingent of folks from our refineries on the West Coast, the Midwest, down in the Gulf states and the East Coast. And I kind of spearheaded the East Coast contingent that came throughout our legislative department. We did that. We were able to lobby either by dropping off the package for the legislation or actually meeting with senators and Congress folks. We met with over 80 folks over a 2-day period, which was, if you've ever been in Washington and walking around there, that was pretty impressive for us to hit that many legislative offices. So we're hoping that's going to get some ground. Senator Krausey out of Pennsylvania was a big help with that, and his office with helping us with that legislation and drafting that legislation. Like I said, a lot of it came from our folks in Washington. We have a very, very good legislative department of the steel workers who do great work on lots of things. So that was one thing we were working on. Big around RINs this year. But like I said, this is
let me jump in there. It's such a complicated issue for people. We had a number of political leaders on Norcross on the program, and but I remember asking him. This was a couple years back. It wasn't 2023. It was one of our first shows a couple years ago, and one of the real stunning things was because we talked about not only, obviously jeopardizing our refineries, but, we have national security issues, right? And so all kinds of stuff going on. And I asked him, I said, what do your colleagues think? Okay. And in Congress, he's like, I don't think they really understand it. And it's amazing how many people and the impacts of it. And it's amazing how many people in leadership roles are voting on things. They're listening to their staffers. I don't think they understand it. And it impacts so many people. So obviously we commend what you guys are doing, the USW, and obviously we're a platform for that. Lots of things going on, Ken. And you were talking about a trip to Norway. Okay.
Well, the United Kingdom. We went over to the United Kingdom. There was a union from Norway there. And with that had to deal with, that wasn't a RINs issue. We're looking at the green energy, right? Everybody's talking green energy and all that. And our president, from our international president to our district director, everybody understands that green energy and all that, right. But not at the cost of our members' jobs. We have to look at this and be strategic about how it's done. You see a lot of legislation and stuff now being pushed at, I think it's my personal opinion. I'm not saying this is the steelworkers position, but it seems like it's just knee jerk and we don't have the infrastructure and the plan in place to how we deal with this, right? Because when you look at a lot of these renewable fuel jobs, it doesn't take as many people to run a hydrogen hub as it does a refinery, right? So what do you do with these people, right? People throw the word just transition around. And I haven't had anybody explain what exactly just transition looks like. So we had, Mike Smith, who's head of our oil sector for the steel workers. He, with some folks from over in the UK, decided that we wanted to get together and try, because they're facing the same issues we're facing. So we went over there, and Unite, the union is the big union over there that represents their energy, a lot of their energy sector, and we have a strategic alliance with them. And also there's the Norwegian union that we met with, which is Industry Energy, right? And they're a little further ahead in this whole green energy thing than we are, which I found out. I did not realize that, but I found that out through this meeting. So it was an initial meeting to kind of just exchange ideas and see what we're saying. And, even there, we were all talking about, we just transitioned. What does that mean? What does it look like,
Well, let me jump in there for a second, because, with the renewables, and we all accept what, to an extent with what's going on in regards to renewables coming into the market and all those things. However, from a technological standpoint, you can't just push a button, okay, right. Number one, and make a transition. Most of the renewable forms of energy need traditional energy resources to run them. Number one, okay, and a lot of the legislation, like you said, just is it's in a sense it's just a clean sweep. You cut everything off, and we're going to start it. Nothing could be further from the truth. And that's why we all have to work together, okay? But you mentioned something about jobs. Another great example. Sean Steffi from the Boilermakers Union, he did something real interesting, and he went to a job fair. Okay, Sean is a business agent with the Boilermakers up in Western PA, and one of our building trades leaders up in that part of the state. And the jobs that the transition, okay, that this particular area was bragging about, went from good paying union jobs, family sustaining, to $15 an hour. Okay. And so there are so many issues that are being broad brushed. Okay. And just in a conversation or a speech that includes the technology to actually make things happen, where we all need to work together, and the jobs. Okay. Of course, there's not as many jobs needed, but also the quality of the jobs, the pay, and all those things. Okay, it just whoa. Let's hold up here and let's have real conversation. Let our leaders like yourself, delve into these issues, and whatever direction we're going, let's do it together. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that like you said, we all are aware that the world's changing and all that. But you have to be, like I said before, strategic about it. You have to, make sure that, we don't leave anybody behind. I've seen some where they're talking within 10 years. I don't see how, like you said, it's like throwing a switch. How do you do that? Because I don't even think for, just an example, electric vehicles. I know in my state, the infrastructure is not there for charging stations and all those types of things.
Well, that's a great. So right. We only got 3 to 4 minutes. Let's talk about that. Okay. Like we talked about electric vehicles. Well, awesome. I mean, who doesn't support them coming into the market? Well, they got a lot of issues over in the Congo with the critical minerals it takes. So we got to deal with a lot. But them coming into the market's one thing. The mandates, which we've been talking about, pick it up from there, because that is a whole nother ball of wax. Going to shut it, 2035, we're going to only be able to sell electric vehicles in a lot of states. Come on.
Yeah. I personally don't see how that's even doable that quickly. Like you said, you got to look at the technology. You got to look at, you're going to be displacing a lot of folks, because, you're going to be probably shutting down refineries possibly and all that, which another thing you brought up, brings up, security issues and all that kind of stuff, because you're not going to switch your tanks and your Humvees and all that over that quickly to all electric or anything like that. So if we're shutting down refineries and all that, where are you going to get this gasoline from? Where are you going to get the petroleum products you need? And I don't think people realize too, just, you look at a refinery, you think gas and distillate, stuff like that. there's all kinds of stuff in our everyday use that has petroleum-based products in it and all that. So
we'd be naked right now.
Right. So, I mean, it's a big, you know, you got to look at the big picture and also think outside of the box how you're going to do this. You know, like I said, our thing is, you know, we don't want our folks out on the street. We don't want to lose these good sustained jobs that we have, you know, family sustaining jobs. You know, if you're going to replace, you know, $120,000 a year job with $120,000 a year job, that's one thing. But from what I've heard and what I've seen so far, that's not a plan. That plan's not in place. So I think, you know, we got to, you know, everybody wants a clean environment. Everybody wants, you know, the air to be good and the water to be good and all those types of things. And we all realize that things change, but you got to be strategic about it. You got to make sure that you have the infrastructure in place, and you also have to make sure that you take care of the people that you're displacing out of these jobs. You know, whether that's, you know, if they're not making what they're making, there's some kind of displaced fund or something to help these folks transition or something. But, you know, I haven't heard anybody have a plan on how to handle this. It's just, here's the mandates.
It's a cluster in so many areas. And what's amazing is, and we only got about 30 seconds, is that the votes for this stuff are happening right now. So for these 2035 mandates, okay, 2027, 2035, and so many people, we've had posters on the program, they don't even know what they are, okay? And when they are polled, they're not for them. Ken, if you would, obviously we're so appreciative of you being on the program and doing what you do on a daily basis in United Steelworkers, you know, addressing these issues. If you would, parting words, my friend. Obviously, it's New Year's. Happy New Year's to yourself and your fellow USW representatives. Parting words. You got about 20 seconds to your members here for 2024.
Just that, you know, we're aware of the situations that are going around. Our international is with you know, the green energy and things like that, and we're doing everything we can to look out for our members politically and legislatively. You know, our president, Tom Conway, who recently passed away, he had sent letters to the governor of New Jersey and other states, letting them know that, hey, we understand that this is coming, but, you know, we're not, you can't, like you say, throw a switch, and we need to make sure that our members are protected and their families are taken care of. You know, that's what.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So Ken Gomeringer, United Steelworkers International Staff Rep, District 4. We thank you so much for what you're doing on a daily basis and your fellow representatives. And we really appreciate you being on the broadcast, and a happy 2024 to you and your members, my friend.
Yep, and happy 2024 to you all and everybody out there, and thank you for having me on the program.
Awesome, my friend. We'll have more from the Labor and Energy Show in just a minute.
My name is Eleanor Northaft. My husband was in the union, Local 282. As I'm getting older, I'd like somebody to fight for me. So I called up Retiree First.
Hi.
And I got Brooke.
So nice to meet you. I'm Brooke. I'm an advocate at Retiree First. I've been working with Eleanor for 3 years. She was one of my first calls. I helped her with transportation to her doctors, getting her glasses reimbursed.
Oh, they are pretty fancy.
I'm basically just answering any questions she has.
And I always have a lot of questions.
Not too many.
I have a friend there. I love it because I can depend on her to help me out in any situation.
Oh, I'm excited.
She always comes through for me.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
All right, welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show here on the Jacob Media Network. We're going to bring David Butterworth, business agent, Pipeliners Local 798, into the broadcast. We are waiting for David.
I'm here.
Okay, there you go. There was a dark screen there for a second, but having said that, we appreciate it. Dave, welcome to the broadcast. You're not a stranger to the broadcast. Obviously, we had the pleasure of bringing you onto the program in Erie, PA, up at the Shale Insight, where you were a guest speaker up there, which is where we met, and I'll never forget it. So the Shale Insight convention in Erie, PA, features the Marcellus Shale leadership and community, and and so they had different leaders speaking, and David Butterworth came onto the platform, and man, oh man, what a dynamic speaker! And literally within 10 minutes, I had him on the broadcast, and he certainly is dynamic and was really appreciative that we had such a great labor leader up there. David, you're the business agent for Pipeliners Local 798. If you would, okay, tell our listeners about yourself and the Pipeliners Local 798 and who you represent, what your members do.
Okay. Thanks for the kind words, by the way. I appreciate that. We built the Alaska pipeline. We were the main. There is an Alaska local up there out of Fairbanks. It's UA local, but in 1949 we were organized right after they laid the war lines during World War II, and some guys that didn't have cell phones, they had Western Union. They organized. They saw a need for organized labor building pipelines throughout the country. So that's how we started. Me personally, I got my union book in 1997. I was still in the Army, and my dad got my book for me. And I came out, started working pipeline. I actually went to college while I was doing it in the summer. Coming back to West Virginia, there's not a lot of good jobs, good paying jobs with a journalism degree. So I loved pipelining, and I did it in the summer, went back to it, and never looked back.
So it's interesting, David, because let's talk about our pipelines, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of created. We had Peter Holran of Enbridge on last week, okay, and I kind of equate our pipelines, okay. In an analogy, they help support our way of life. They're like the veins that carry the blood in our body, okay. And without pipelines, obviously we rely on trains and trucks, which are obviously important, okay? And we've got great professionals in those fields and all that. But we're talking about efficiency, okay?
Right.
And you want to talk about safety and all that. Our pipelines are such an important part of our way of life, okay? And so address that, if you will, because we talk about safety and efficiency. The pipelines are obviously safer than any other form of transportation.
I'll start with the safety and efficiency, and then I'll talk about the lifeline, like you're saying. If you look up the Energy Information Administration and the Department of Transportation, they keep records. We're far and away the safest, most efficient way to transport molecules around the country. Trains and trucks don't come close. I'm not bashing trains and trucks, but look at the stats. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Once a pipeline's built, you don't know it's there. And, if we do have the new technology we're building these pipelines with today is second to none. The welding processes are second to none. Each welder that goes to the job has to take a destructive test. If you bust x-rays, you're gone. This is a highly, highly skilled job, and it's highly regulated. Once we build the pipeline, they put water in the pipeline, and it's pumped up to 1.5 times the operating pressure, and it's held for 8 hours. It's not these are tried and true methods that we've been using for a long time. So, and I have no problem going to bed at night knowing that I represent folks that build the safest pipelines in the world. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, as far as the lifelines, we've got to currently have the Mountain Valley Pipeline going down in West Virginia and Virginia. in the South, they shut down a bunch of coal burners, right? What do we used to do in the South? We used to manufacture. Now they can't get gas hookups in North Carolina and South Carolina. We've got the gas in West Virginia, and we're transporting it down there. What is wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that, but we have faced stiff opposition, and it took an act of Congress to get this pipeline done. It should never take an act of Congress to build a pipeline. Also, the new methods you were talking about earlier, they're getting protested as well. Carbon capture, they're having heck getting those lines permitted throughout the Midwest, where they were going to take the ethanol and drop emissions. And here's another thing. Natural gas has taken a black eye that I don't think is fair. Natural gas has dropped emissions and will continue to drop emissions. We were supposed to be the bridge fuel, is what the Obama administration said. We were the bridge fuel, but the environmentalists turned their gun around on us once they killed coal. So
having said that, and it's very difficult when you talk about a lot of extreme left environmentalists who there's no details ever explained in the conversation. Like we just said, like the conversation, we just have with Ken Gomeringer of the USW. You can't just flick a switch, and our pipelines are so important. You mentioned we're going to get into the permitting, okay? We're basically shutting the lights out on ourselves, okay, without any efficient management. And a lot of the reasons that you get from a lot of the really extreme individuals that are doing everything they can to, like you said, turn the gun on different individuals and different industries is safety and efficiency. There's nothing more safer or efficient than the pipeline. Having said that, let's kind of break it down a little bit, okay? When you talk about the safety and the quality of the workforce, okay? First of all, what is your jurisdiction with Local 798?
I cover Virginia to Maine, east of the Ohio River. Now, Jimmy Snell covers the 5 counties in Philadelphia, and New Jersey has jurisdiction in New Jersey. We also don't do the streets of New York. Everywhere else we do it. If it's a union pipeline job, it's going to be one of our contractors, and my members are going to be working on it.
So how many members do you represent?
I'm just looking at it here. I've got a total of 6,060.
Right. And so when you talk about the skills that pipeliners possess, okay,
and we live all throughout the country.
I mean, you're talking 6,000 members. Your day's, substantially different than a lot of labor leaders in regards to, you have such a big jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But one of the things you talked about, the welders, let's actually delve into that safety and and the efficiency of the workforce. Okay.
Yep.
Because why not? Right. I mean, everybody talks about, the fear factors. No, let's talk about the welders. Okay. And
no problem.
Your workforce is mainly comprised of certified welders who, are experts in a lot of different areas of welding.
We have 1,800 active welders.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so it's welders and out of that workforce, what other types of skilled workers?
Welders, journeymen, and helpers. Each welder has a helper, and if you've ever welded on a pipeline, it is labor intensive. So you need to have a helper there to run we run the big grinders, the 9-inch DeWalts, the big ones. And, you move from weld to weld each day, and sometimes you're jumping across the pipe. So each welder, it pays off to have a helper. And then you have the journeymen. They're the ones they're in the main crew in the front that's putting the pipe together. They run the internal clamps. They put the pipeline on the wood. They carry the line through the hills and do all that. And then when it's over with, they're the main ones that put the water in the pipe to do the hydrostatic testing.
So I'm an iron worker by trade.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a labor leader for 40 years. By the way, this is something funny. So we obviously we have welders, and you talk about the high-rise buildings and all that, but they used to call me slag man, okay, because you could hear my rod sticking in apprentice school. Welding is no joke, man.
It's not. It's not. We've got a 52,000 square foot welding. And here's the thing: if you can't weld on our jobs, you get found out very quick.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, you have to pass a test at our union hall before, unless you're organized. If we're real busy,
Right.
we'll organize some guys in. But still, the gas company test is stringent as it comes. I mean, your whole weld is cut apart, and if there's any imperfections, you're up to 1104 code, and if you can't pass it, unfortunately, you go home. So I don't know of any other type of job. Most jobs, you put a hard hat on, take a drug test, and go to work. Not with us. Not with us. If you can't pass that test, you go home.
Oh yeah, no, we have the best welders in the world in our
Yep.
unions.
Yep.
And we're very, very fortunate. It's a high and it's such a high tech area. But one of the things that we talk, one of the things we talk a lot about, you mentioned apprentice school and I'm sure journeyman retraining. Let's talk about that apprentice school, like you said. Unless somebody's gets organized and brought into the local, already has those skills. Okay, a lot of times they're learning those skills in our apprentice schools. Talk about that and the quality education, both as a journey person and as a certified welder. Talk about the education our workforce is getting in those schools.
Well, I went to the welding school in Tulsa in 2005. I'll be honest with you, you can't be prepared what you're getting ready to get into on a pipeline job. But it got me to the door to where I could pass a gas company test, but the speed and the skill and the craftsmanship, that's where it takes folks out there on the job helping each other to get you where you need to be. And my father was a welder, and that helped out a lot. But this was back in the day where he put you on the crew where they were going to drag you down the right of way, and that's how you learned. And you learned baptism by fire, I guess is the best way to say it. But still to this day, we do not have a current apprenticeship, but we are developing one because we've always been in the private sector. So, and also sometimes our jobs only last 3 weeks. So it's been problematic for us to put something like that together, but where we're getting into the hydrogen and the carbon capture with the federal funding and the 45Q, we are developing currently in right now. I mean, they're working on it right now in Tulsa. We're developing an apprenticeship program.
And you get but when you're on the job, there's obviously.
But we also still had our classes. I mean, we had 2 classes a year, and I was always recommend to a young person. I didn't mind being a helper for 3 or 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
I learned a lot that way. And in our local, if you have a teachable spirit and a good attitude, you will not have a problem. The folks we have problems with are the ones that already know everything. It's hard to teach somebody that already knows.
Well, and by the way, it's so interesting that you say that because, I always say in any field, but I remember, when I was a young person, don't be afraid to ask questions, okay,
right.
and be educated by the workers and the high standards that are there. One of the things you mentioned about welding, and first of all, the welders make all the money, the overtime, and a lot of the
we're the last hired and the first one laid off too.
Well, it's interesting because you said, and when I am working, it's the same thing. Yeah. Immediately, you're working your way out of a job.
Well, yeah, and that's what we're supposed to do.
Let me ask you a little bit of a question. We were obviously, we've had Peter Holran on the program, and you talk about a lot of the issues, okay? And it goes so far as you talk about the Line 5 pipeline and the replacement pipeline, which means they're upgrading the current. They're facing issues, even with the replacement projects, which means that you're creating a safer environment, you're upgrading and doing all those things. Talk about what our pipeline workforce and unions go through on a daily basis, even to the extent of dealing with upgraded projects that are already there.
Well, there's a movement right now. It doesn't matter if it's fossil fuels, they don't want to do it. And I noticed this trend around 2017. We had some of our best years in probably 2008 through 2017. And I went to a couple of public hearings. I've actually, my local hasn't missed a federal or a state hearing in the Northeast, probably from 2017 until today. We go to all of them because, we feel like what I noticed was if we're not there, they only hear one side of the story. And I have tried to talk to the other side. I've tried to take the high road, but they never really wanted to deal in facts. They wanted to, I talked to one lady and she just kept repeating, I just want clean water. I'm like, listen, I'm not, I'm not debating that. We're going to give you clean water. We're going to do everything right here. But that's just, it's hard to argue with folks that aren't, working in the world of facts.
How many lives do not exactly, but just to the magnitude of our pipelines, okay, and the fuels that are transported via them, how many lives, do they impact on a daily
I've
basis?
got some examples. Do you remember the Texas freeze?
Yeah, of course.
That's what happens when you don't have your fuel sources. People unfortunately perish. We also had the Colonial Pipeline that carries liquid. It carries gas. It goes throughout the country, and it's an old line. When it had I can't remember what exactly. I think it was hacked. This was a few years back. I noticed in my community people were starting to hoard gas. So what's that going to do? I mean, if they're not even thinking about the guy behind them,
right?
So I feel grid reliability. I'm on all of the above energy guy, and I don't say climate change is a hoax, or I'm not going to go there.
Oh.
But what I'm saying is we have to keep our current grid up to maintain our quality of life. You saw what happened in Texas, and that was where none of their lines were winterized. Basically, wind failed, solar failed, natural gas failed, oil failed, everything failed there, and because they weren't winterized. But sadly, people perished. And you think about it. I mean, the elderly, they need their heat, they need their AC, and we provide that. But I think there's just a lot of folks in the general public that don't realize what we provide.
Exactly. Let's talk about some of the issues that are, kind of connected to that, to say the least. Permitting reform.
Yes.
Okay? the need to, really, implement it at a high level. We can't react to situations. We can't start new projects. We can't continue projects that are already going. We got a couple minutes. Talk about that. We got 2 minutes. Just to try a touch.
I had the unfortunate, I was on the side of projects being shut down. In 2018, we had the Mountain Valley in full swing. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline had 3,700 members working in that's my members working in this area, and everything was good. And then they started taking the legal route, saying that the permits weren't valid. And then there was a circuit court that agreed and saying the permits weren't valid. That's why I think permitting reform is the end game, and it's got to be at the federal level. Also, we've got issues in the states too. New York won't they just won't approve a permit up there, and we had the Constitution Pipeline. It got shut down. I can name the Nessie that was in New York, Northeast Supply Enhancement. That never got off the ground. And, for a while, JDoc, I never thought I was going to get a win. And then Mountain Valley, Senator Manchin, who is a big proponent of permitting reform. I met with him last August, and he was pushing for it. He really, really tried to get it done, and politics got involved, and he wasn't able to get it done. But that is the end game, because in this country, it takes 5 to 10 years to permit an energy project. And in Australia and Canada, it's 1 to 3. That takes away the certainty, and nobody wants to invest.
Right.
So I mean, we have to do something. I mean, it's taking entirely too long to permit our projects. And I hope nobody else has to go through that. What I did with them, getting just the rug jerked out from under you midstream. Those were terrible days. I can promise you.
No, absolutely. David Butterworth, obvious business agent, Pipeliners Local 798, obviously, and also a member of our Energy Education Awareness Council, which we really appreciate. We want to thank you so much for what you do every day. You're one of the most dynamic labor leaders we have out there, and representing your members and our union community in general. We appreciate you being on the program, David, and have a great 2024. Obviously, we appreciate you, and we're a platform for what you do every day.
Well, thank you for doing what you do. I mean, we got to get our voice out there, whether it be at the public hearings, on Capitol Hill, in the state houses. We have to get our message out there because common sense must prevail.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
We'll have more from the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey in just a minute.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
The best way to describe Anthony, David, and Jan are that they're my brothers. I met Anthony at LA Fitness because I noticed that he had a Teamster's bag and his dad was a Teamster leader.
I'm a third generation son of labor. My grandmother worked in a factory. My mother and father were both Teamster members. I don't think there's a trade that I don't have a family member in.
What's so big for me coming from a union background is what affects one member affects the entire membership.
A lot of people can relate to the issues that individuals deal with. We pride ourselves on empathy.
The big value that's always instilled in you if you grow up in a union household is the importance of brotherhood. People that lean on each other, that rely on each other.
When we were building this business, having that background and knowing what matters most to the union members is really what we use to drive and build out Retiree First.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
And back here on the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Really great stuff today, JDoc, with Ken and David. Man, sometimes I love just sitting back and listening and consuming the information as a listener or as a viewer watching instead of being involved in the Q&A or the interview process. Good stuff today. Great way to end up 2023.
No question, Joe. And you can see, obviously, our labor leaders, Ken Gomeringer, United Steelworkers, okay, and David Butterworth, the Pipeliners. I mean, they're not only at the forefront of their industries and the workforce that they represent, but they're also at the forefront of the issues, okay, and educating the public, not only for good jobs, but also they care about the environment and all those things, and also the legislative issues, dealing with them every day. Okay, these things just don't happen by themselves, but thankfully for us as members of the general public, we have people out there representing common sense and energy so that we all can, turn a switch on and electric, and we get a light on, and our heat and our air conditioning comes on, and we can fuel our cars and all those things. Yes, Joe, like we've talked a million times, where, there's a transition in regards to different renewables coming into the market and all those things, but we need our we need our traditional energy resources and industries as much or more than ever. Okay, and together we can make it happen. We've said it many times. This is not a union issue. It shouldn't be a political issue. It's a human issue. And together with great labor leaders and great energy sector leaders, we can definitely do it. And you and I, are a platform of for information and education, because ultimately the general public has to know what's going on.
As David ended up his segment saying, common sense is so relevant today. That's going to do it for this edition of the Labor and Energy Show with Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey for 2023.
Oh, yeah.
JDoc, I'll give you 20 seconds before I say goodbye.
Oh, yeah, I just want to wish everybody a happy new year. Joe, like you said, 2022 and 2023 were great building blocks for the broadcast. We're building every day. We thank all of our labor and energy sector leaders. Nobody cares more about the environment than them, okay? And we're a platform to educate people. We can't wait for 2024. Happy New Year to everybody. Together, obviously, we can create a great energy, a platform for America and beyond.
And don't forget, if you miss any of today's show, you can download the podcast or watch it on YouTube. Just search the Labor and Energy Show on behalf of my partner, JDoc. I'm Joe Kraus. Happy New Year, everyone. See you next time.
My name is Eleanor Northaft. My husband was in the union, Local 282. And as I'm getting older, I would like somebody to fight for me. So I called up Retiree First.
Hi.
And I got Brooke.
So nice to meet you. I'm Brooke. I'm an advocate at Retiree First. I've been working with Eleanor for 3 years. She was one of my first calls. I helped her with transportation to her doctors, getting her glasses reimbursed.
Oh, they are pretty fancy.
I'm basically just answering any questions she has.
And I always have a lot of questions.
Not too many.
I have a friend there. I love it because I can depend on her to help me out in any situation.
Oh, I'm excited.
She always comes through for me.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.